Among the myriad images that swirl through the modern imagination of Viking culture, fierce raiders, intrepid explorers, and indomitable warriors, there exists a darker, more harrowing specter, the Blood Eagle. This ritualized execution, shrouded in myth and whispered through the sagas, belongs to the Vikings as a grotesque embodiment of their brutal and unforgiving ethos. To understand the Blood Eagle is to confront a spectacle of ritualized cruelty that transcends mere punishment, revealing the depths of Viking terror and the chilling calculus of sacrifice as a tool of domination. The Blood Eagle's origins are as elusive as they are macabre. It is primarily through medieval Norse sagas and poetry that this ritual emerges, described in vivid, horrifying detail. Yet, these sources are entangled in layers of literary embellishment and political propaganda, prompting modern historians to question the ritual's very existence. Was the Blood Eagle a literal method of execution, performed with grim precision and ritual solemnity? Or was it a metaphorical narrative device, a symbolic expression of defeat and humiliation on the battlefield? The controversy persists because the sources are scant and often contradictory, steeped in the agendas of their time. Nevertheless, the vivid accounts that survived paint a portrait of a ritual execution so brutal it exposes the darkest depths of Viking brutality. According to these medieval texts, the execution began with the condemned being laid face down, the executioner wielding a blade to sever the ribs from the spine. This act was no simple dismemberment. It was a deliberate, ritualized carving that left the victim's back flayed open, each rib lifted and spread outward like the feathers of an eagle's wings. The lungs were then pulled through the newly created openings, splayed in the air, mimicking the outstretched wings of the eagle in flight. A ghastly mimicry of the natural world twisted into a spectacle of pain. This was not merely an act of physical torture but a symbolic gesture, one that sought to grant the condemned a grotesque form of posthumous flight. The eagle was spread, the lungs fluttering in the wind of death, a haunting image that fused execution with sacrificial transcendence. The purpose of this ritual was layered with chilling complexity. The Blood Eagle was reserved for those deemed traitors or formidable enemies, a punishment that transcended ordinary death to become an assertion of power and vengeance. It was a sacrificial terror, a public spectacle designed to instill fear and reinforce social hierarchies through ritualized violence. The sacrifice was essential not only for retribution, but also as an offering to the gods, a demonstration of divine favor secured through blood and suffering. Within the harsh logic of Viking society, such a display confirmed the executioner's dominance and the victim's utter subjugation, transforming the act into a performative assertion of cosmic and social order. This ritualized execution was as much psychological warfare as it was physical punishment. The spectacle of the Blood Eagle was intended to terrorize both the condemned and any witnesses, an indelible warning of the fate awaiting those who defied Viking authority. The public nature of the execution amplified its terror, transforming it into a ritualized spectacle that communicated the merciless reach of Viking justice. The eagle was spread not just on the victim's back, but across the collective psyche of Viking society, a symbol of the ruthlessness that underpinned their power. To survive among the Vikings was to live under the shadow of such ritualized terror, where death was not merely an end but a message carved into flesh and memory. Yet, the interpretation of this ritual is fraught with difficulty. The medieval sources that describe the Blood Eagle are often poetic and ambiguous, leaving ample room for debate. Some scholars argue that the ritual was a later invention, a sensationalized account meant to dramatize Viking savagery for Christian audiences eager to vilify their pagan predecessors. Others suggest it might have been a symbolic metaphor for battlefield defeat, where cutting the wings implied incapacitating an enemy's power rather than a literal dissection. The limited archaeological evidence offers no definitive proof of the practice, deepening the mystery. Despite these challenges, the Blood Eagle remains emblematic of the extreme forms of violence that belonged to the Vikings, whether as literal history or mythic narrative. The very concept of the Blood Eagle forces us to confront the intersection of ritual, violence, and belief within Viking culture. Execution was not simply about punishment. It was a sacrificial act imbued with religious significance. The sacrifice was essential to communicate with the divine, to assert dominance not only over enemies but over the unseen forces governing fate and honor. The eagle, a powerful symbol in Norse mythology representing Odin's connection to death and battle, was invoked through this ritualized execution. By creating the image of the eagle through the victim's mutilated body, the ritual served as a dark invocation of divine will, reinforcing the sacred nature of violence and death. Moreover, the role of the executioner transcended that of a mere killer. This figure was a ritual specialist, a mediator between the mortal and the divine, charged with performing a ceremony that was as much about cosmic order as it was about earthly justice. To wield the blade in the Blood Eagle was to enact a solemn rite, a terrifying demonstration of power that balanced on the knife edge between life, death, and the afterlife. The executioner's actions were deliberate and symbolic, underscoring that this was no mere punishment, but a terrifying spectacle designed to instill fear and assert dominance through ritualized terror. The psychological impact on the condemned was undoubtedly profound. To face the Blood Eagle was to confront a death that was both agonizing and humiliating, a spectacle of powerlessness and sacrifice. The victim became a living canvas for the projection of Viking ideals: honor, vengeance, and submission to divine will, etched in blood and bone. For the community, witnessing such a ritual reinforced social cohesion through shared terror and reverence. It was a brutal education in the consequences of betrayal and the supremacy of Viking justice, a spectacle that belonged to the Vikings as a terrifying emblem of their uncompromising world. In examining the Blood Eagle, one confronts not only the ritual itself but the cultural matrix that allowed such a practice to exist. It was a ritual of extreme violence, yes, but also one deeply embedded in the symbolic language of Norse belief and power structures. The eagle was spread across flesh and psyche alike, a ghastly testament to the intertwining of sacrifice and sovereignty. Whether historical reality or mythological construct, the Blood Eagle stands as a window into the grim mechanisms by which the Vikings wielded terror and ritual to shape their world, a brutal reminder that in their pursuit of honor and dominance, sacrifice was essential, and the eagle was spread. The Blood Eagle, whether a grim historical reality or a potent myth, has cast a long shadow that extends far beyond the dark ages of Viking rule. Its legacy persists in modern culture, where it has become a symbol synonymous with the ferocity and ruthlessness attributed to Norse warriors. This image, however, is often divorced from historical nuance, transformed into a cinematic spectacle or literary device that amplifies Viking savagery while obscuring the complexities of their society. The Blood Eagle's raw, visceral horror captivates the imagination, yet this fascination demands a careful, critical examination of how societies mythologize violence and what consequences arise from glorifying such brutal pasts. In contemporary media, from television series to films and novels, the Blood Eagle is frequently portrayed with dramatic flair, emphasizing its gruesome details as a shorthand for Viking ferocity. This portrayal feeds into a broader cultural narrative that equates Viking identity with unrelenting bloodlust and barbarism. Yet, this simplification risks perpetuating stereotypes that overshadow the multifaceted nature of Viking life, which encompass trade, exploration, and complex social structures alongside warfare and violence. The ritual's enduring presence in popular culture illustrates how mythic violence can eclipse historical reality, shaping collective memory through spectacle rather than accuracy. The ethical implications of this mythologizing are significant. The gruesome nature of the Blood Eagle prompts reflection on how societies remember and represent violence. To romanticize or sensationalize such a ritual without context risks desensitizing audiences to the human suffering involved and obscures the moral and cultural frameworks that gave rise to such acts. The sacrifice was essential to Viking ritual and justice, but modern fascination with these acts must be tempered by an understanding of their human cost and the dangers of glorifying ritualized cruelty. This tension between fascination and ethical responsibility underscores the challenges in interpreting and presenting Viking history. Re-examining Viking justice and punishment reveals a more nuanced picture than that suggested by the Blood Eagle alone. Archaeological findings and historical records indicate that the Vikings employed a variety of punitive measures, ranging from outlawry and fines to more conventional executions. The Blood Eagle, by contrast, stands apart as an extreme and possibly exceptional form of ritualized execution. Its prominence in saga literature may reflect political and cultural agendas that sought to emphasize the brutality of enemies or to dramatize tales of vengeance and power. Consequently, the Blood Eagle may distort our understanding of Norse legal customs, overshadowing the more mundane and structured aspects of Viking justice systems. The saga literature itself played a crucial role in shaping how Viking violence was recorded and remembered. These medieval Icelandic texts, rich with storytelling and poetic devices, blended historical events with fiction and symbolism. They served various political and cultural purposes, including legitimizing ruling powers and reinforcing social norms. Within this context, the Blood Eagle may have functioned as a narrative tool to evoke terror and respect, rather than a straightforward historical account. The saga's mixture of myth and reality complicates efforts to disentangle fact from artistic or rhetorical invention, highlighting the power of literature to mold collective perceptions of the past. Modern scholars approach these sources with caution, recognizing the need to avoid sensationalism that can distort historical understanding. The Blood Eagle, as a subject, invites both scholarly intrigue and popular fascination, but its study demands rigorous analysis that respects the complexity of Viking culture. Historians emphasize the importance of contextualizing such rituals within broader social, religious, and legal frameworks, rather than isolating them as mere spectacles of violence. This balanced perspective challenges the caricature of Vikings as mere barbarians, acknowledging instead a society capable of both harsh justice and rich cultural traditions. The myth versus reality debate surrounding the Blood Eagle ultimately reveals the layered nature of Viking history. It embodies the tension between brutal historical practices and the symbolic, performative aspects of ritual violence. Whether the Blood Eagle was performed literally or existed as a metaphorical expression, it remains a powerful emblem of Viking brutality that belonged to the Vikings in their cultural imagination and societal mechanisms. This emblem serves as a reminder that Norse society was neither unrelentingly savage nor simplistically civilized, but a complex world where sacrifice was essential, terror was ritualized, and the eagle was spread across flesh and memory alike.